It's kind of like people will think, oh, I do an approach, for 30 days, I heal myself magically. And then I just go back to the standard American diet, not moving my body, not sleeping well, too much screen time, not addressing my stress or my spirituality or my emotions, plus eating like garbage and wonder why we're not healthy.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching our videos. If you'd like to support us some more, you can explore our homemade natural skincare products at purelytallow.com. Thank you so much for supporting my small business. Hey everybody, welcome to the Carnivore Revolution. I'm your host, Serena, and today my guest is Rob Stewart. You may know him as Rob Stewart on Instagram. He posts a lot of information about basically just eating whole foods for healing and has healed some pretty serious eczema. So thank you so much for joining me, Rob. I want to talk about all that stuff today.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I think a lot of people have things like eczema and psoriasis, and very few people know that those kinds of things originate in the gut. The doctor puts people on meds, gives them steroid creams, and just kind of sends them away. And most people, honestly, I think anyway, I have to believe that they don't know how much of a difference what we're eating can make. So let's start with your story and what led you to realizing that what you eat is what's going to make a difference for your skin.
Yeah, just to kind of unpack that a little bit, and then I'll jump into my story. One of the things that is confusing to people is they don't really know the origin or the root cause of something like psoriasis, eczema, dermatitis, sebderm, rosacea, even acne, and a lot of people talk about on social media a lot, like, hey, it's a gut biome issue. It's a stomach issue. It's not. That's not actually what it is. It's actually an immune disorder. The reason we attack the gut or balance the gut is because that's the entry point to the immune system. We only have a few ways to actually elicit an immune response. The autonomic nervous system, the fight or flight system. One of them is through the gut. And so that's one of the major portals and major leverage points to actually affect the root cause, which is the immune system. So that's always something that I like to tell people is like, yes, the gut's going to be a major player in healing the skin, but it's actually a symptom of the immune system, not actually the root cause. How did I come to this realization? Just to be black and white, from being completely lied to and let down by the Western medical system. I spent like 80 grand on specialists, pharmacists, specialist dermatologists, doctors, MDs. And I found that unfortunately they were some of the most, a lot of them were really great people, but they were the marketing department of the pharmaceutical industry. Basically, they didn't have an idea about nutrition. They didn't have an idea about healing, health in general. Most of them were specialists, and so they had a very reductive science viewpoint on healing. Here, what's your symptoms? Here's the drug to match that symptom. And I found out pretty quickly I wasn't going to get any help from my doctors at all. And I needed to take responsibility for my own health. And that sent me on a really long journey of figuring all this stuff out. And that was, 20 years ago now at this point.
So what led you to decide, like once you made that decision that this is not helping, these doctors are not going to help me, what led you down that kind of nutrition rabbit hole that made you realize that it's the nutrition, really?
Yeah, really, it was a combination of, at that time, I was working with a disabled dude. He was a doctor who was a quadriplegic, and I was at that time getting certified as a yoga therapist, and I had previously gotten a degree in behavioral science. So I had an idea of like holistically the working system of the emotional and mental side of the body. And when I started working with this dude, I started seeing profound changes in his health based on what we were feeding him and how he ate. Excuse me. And it was just one little thing led to another. I hired an Ayurvedic practitioner, worked with him for a while, and it just became very obvious that, really the gut biome and the immune system and the hormone system and the filtration organs and the lymphatic system, they are not really separate. They're all kind of one system that works and corresponds with each other. And to have balance in all of them, you have to have balance starting with the diet. It's like a foundational thing. So I went down the rabbit hole of studying, and this is pre YouTube really. So it was, you know, I was dating a girl that was an ex-Harvard medical student. So I hijacked her website into the Harvard library, started reading books about, and this is like good books that you could find in the Harvard library were like 1940s and before about medical, because after that, the pharmaceutical industry came in and really started underwriting all the medical books. But previous to that, you would find books about veganism. You'd find books about meat-only diets. You'd find books about strange protocols like eating potatoes only, or, you know, low-fat beef only. And it just illuminated like, okay, there's lots of weird and interesting things a person can do to elicit hormonal and immune responses based on food and lifestyle. And I just kept running with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because people will say, I've tried everything. They'll, like, when somebody is desperate, like you were, we've all been desperate for, whether it's, you know, something that seems a little bit trivial compared to something more serious, whether it's weight loss, but things like inflammation, autoimmune diseases, skin problems, which is included in that, and all of those things, even things like MS and cancer, people will say, I've tried everything. We tried everything. Did you? Did you try everything? Because nutrition is so important. And I think people just blow it off. Like if you told people do a plant-based diet for that, they would jump all over it, right? But you tell them eat only meat for that, and they're like, whoa, hold on a minute.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do find that people have tried a lot of things, and there really are people who've tried quote unquote everything, but they haven't customized anything. So that's a big part of it. Also, I talk with a lot of people every year. I've worked with over 3,000 clients at this point over the last decade. And you do hear that I've tried everything. And generally what I jump into with them, and I think this is a good point for people to understand, is the healing process is not 2 weeks or 30 days. So trying something doesn't mean I kind of did a diet or a lifestyle change for 25 days and
Mhm.
kind of did it like 70% effort, and I didn't have profound life-changing results. So I decided that didn't work. The barometer I would use for people is like 95 to 98% adherence to a lifestyle and diet for a year to start to scratch the surface, which people don't want to hear that. That's a hard sell. So it takes a lot of time for the body to heal, especially from an immune disorder. And I think people need I needed to learn the art of patience and the ability to go, okay, this is going to take a long time, and I need to like really let the process unfold and be realistic with what I'm telling myself. Like you said, have I really tried everything? And for most people, it's you've thought about trying things, and you've thought about a lot of different things, and you've researched a lot of things, but you really haven't really tried anything yet.
Yeah, and people will say, well, I did that for a while, like whether it's weight loss and autoimmune things, colitis, IBS, people will say, oh, I did that. It didn't work. It only worked when I was eating that way. And as soon as I went back to eating normally, I gained all the weight back or my symptoms came back. That's because, like you said, it has to be a lifestyle. It can't be just a diet, like a quick fix. If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And so if you go back to eating the way you used to eat when you had those symptoms, why does it not seem very hard to understand that if you go back to eating that way again, your symptoms will probably return? People just have such a hard time with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think something that illustrates that pretty clearly is like if you're an alcoholic and you
Mhm.
stop drinking and you're sober for 10 years and then you go back to drinking, you pretty quickly become an alcoholic the first sip.
Mhm.
Um, and it's kind of like people will think, oh, I do an approach, you know, for 30 days, I heal myself magically. And then I just go back to the standard American diet, you know, not moving my body, not sleeping well, too much screen time, not addressing my stress or my spirituality or my emotions, plus eating like garbage, and wonder why we're not healthy.
Yeah. So what kind of things did you do at the very beginning when you were trying to heal, and you were down these rabbit holes, and you were reading all these old nutrition books, which I do find very interesting, and we can come back to that. There are so many old nutrition books. There are books about the keto diet and epilepsy. There are all kinds of books from the early or 1900s that give us a really, like you said, it's like eye-opening, because it was before all the big pharmaceutical companies. What did people do? So that's interesting. We can talk about that. But what kind of things did you do at the beginning when you started down that rabbit hole and started learning all these things?
Yeah, the main things, like probably the big shifters, was eliminating all processed food, um, making sure that I was physically fit and not like by, you know, normal standards of like, oh, cardio twice or three times a week for 30 minutes. And, you know, like resistance training, like once or twice. It was like, no, I like went all in, like daily yoga, daily working out, 20,000 steps a day, average for a year, like got super fit. Addressed my traumas, addressed my spirituality, addressed my horrible relationships. It was a total overhaul. It was managing sleep better. It was changing locations, moving, quitting jobs. It was doing everything I could, because it felt like at that time, and it did, that my life depended on it. So it was like, I'm either going to fix everything and heal, or I'm going to continue to suffer for forever. And it wasn't a hard choice. It felt like, and it kind of sounds dramatic to say, but it felt like the fight for my life. And so I was all in. I was done suffering. I was done feeling like garbage all the time. And I just went all in on the basics.
So I wonder this about you, and then I wonder this about your clients. Do you find, you said you were all in? Do you find yourself to be like a black or white person, like an abstainer versus a moderator? Like, you know, as far as addictions go and processed foods specifically, I feel like people need to understand that it's not their fault that they're addicted to these foods and they're so hard to give up. They're designed that way. They're designed to be addictive. So it's not their fault, but it's their responsibility for their health, for their mental health, for their well-being to give up those foods. So do you work with a lot of people who are so addicted to the carbohydrates and the sugar and the things they shouldn't be eating that are keeping their body inflamed? Do you work with a lot of people, and do you find that it's a lot easier for the abstainers versus the moderators, or vice versa?
There's both good and bad for both groups. For people that have addictive food things, they definitely have to overcome that, and that's very challenging. You know, food. I've heard drug addicts say that a sugar addiction is way harder to overcome than, you know, alcohol or heroin. You know, I've literally had clients tell me that. So I empathize with people that are, you know, foodies, or people that are addicted to eating things and deriving pleasure from that. I'm not one of those people. I can very mechanically not eat processed foods or donuts or sugary treats for very long blocks of time and not think about it, or, you know, I don't have to white knuckle that at all. And so, yeah, food addiction is something that a lot of people have to deal with in the healing circles. The other flip side of that coin is the people that can be super disciplined and abstain from, you know, food addiction or addictions in general, can start to navigate into the waters of obsessive compulsive and overly analytical and overly rigid. And then their cortisol levels are through the roof. They can't get out of their brains. They're very critical of themselves, and those people have just as much challenge overcoming that addiction. So every person kind of has different puzzle pieces that we have to figure out. And I wish it was as simple as like, okay, we just got to overcome a little sugar addiction and we'll be all good to go. Cause some people, you know, everyone likes sugar, but not everyone is addicted to carbs, and not everyone's addicted to food, but some people really are.
Yeah. So how hard was that transition for you at the beginning then? I mean, I know you said you were all in, but did you have that pull at all? Did you want to eat some of those foods that you knew were causing the inflammation?
Yeah, it was a matter of living a certain lifestyle that I just become very used to,
Mhm.
and having to relearn. You know, I didn't know how to cook food. I didn't know how to do anything. So I went from standard American diet even worse, where most of my foods were either fast food or restaurants, to making all my food at home. So just that basic, going shopping and knowing what to buy and stocking my fridge and, oh, when do I make breakfast and do I food prep and how do I make this and this tastes like crap. And so that whole navigation was a learning experience. And there was probably some behavioral stuff of yo-yoing back and forth, being down, not having good weeks and rolling through McDonald's or rolling through Jack in the Box or, other lifestyle factors like smoking weed or drinking that would lead to like, oh, I'm having a good fun time. Might as well eat that pizza. And then that pizza turns into a weekend of crap eating. And so there were those things for me to overcome for sure. But I'm kind of the type of person that once I really have clarity on my goals and purpose, I can go after them pretty aggressively and stick to things. I'm an ex-athlete, and being an athlete as a younger person taught me a lot that I've tapped into as a person that's goal is to be healthy.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point you make. Like, you started cooking foods at home. Sometimes people don't have to eliminate whole groups of foods like a lot of us have done. Sometimes people just need to go back to home cooking. There's a huge difference between buying one of those ready to make meals, like maybe it's a stir fry mix that's already frozen, and you bring it home and you thaw it and you throw it in your wok or your pan and you stir it up and it's ready to eat. There's a big difference between that and buying the frozen vegetables, buying your sauces separately, the most natural sauces you can buy, and then bringing those home and cooking those. And so I think that's a pretty important distinction there about getting food out versus getting food at home, but you can still even be cleaner than making those foods at home. I just think that's so important. There's a huge difference. If wheat wasn't an issue for you, let's say, there's a big difference between making chocolate chip cookies at home with whole ingredients, good quality ingredients, versus buying a tube of Pillsbury cookie dough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a majority of people who aren't suffering from a very strange immune disease, even a person that just has kind of like metabolic unhealthiness, like 90% of Americans, if the only change that they made or people like that would make is eat single ingredient foods and cook all your meals at home, people's lives would dramatically change just by, and then not really even mattering what they eat,
Right.
like if they just ate whole foods and cooked at home, people's lives would change for the better really easily. Now, when you start to get into some strange immune things or autoimmune things or nervous system issues or deep gut biome issues, digestion issues, then things got to get a little bit more specific and a little bit more regimented, and interventions have to go a little more detailed. But in general, if people walked around and moved their bodies and played outside and just ate whole foods cooked at home, they would just have a different life completely.
Yeah, so that's a great place to start, is just with whole foods. And again, if you do want to have those treats, make them yourself. Don't buy the pre-made cookies at the grocery store, whether it be from the bakery or from the cookie section. They're all garbage. Make sure you buy whole ingredients, make it yourself so you know what's in it. And that, like you said, can just make a huge difference for people. So let's go back to the book thing. Do you have any really good quality books that you would like to recommend to people, or old or new, that can help?
Um, Man, the two books that I found to be the most interesting, and I don't even remember what they are called. They might have even been more article based. Was the early work about kids that were having seizures and using a ketogenic diet to basically have a high percentage rate of those kids healing themselves. I found that body of work to be really interesting. That the epileptic studies. Then there was a book that Dr. Shafee mentions a lot, that was a doctor from the 1940s who was putting people on all meat diets and curing all sorts of stuff. Those books are hard to find now. They're buried. Good luck using Google to have a relevant real search these days. But those two studies and those two books were really interesting. I also found that, like a lot of the Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic stuff, although those diet protocols can be a little bit more regimented towards the populations that they come from. Meaning they kind of work better for, Ayurvedic may not work for a Nordic Viking person like myself compared to an Ayurvedic practitioner from South India who's using South Indian foods for South Indian people. I think that there's something to that, but it really, anything for me that was 1950s and before, I was reading it. There's even stuff about fruitarianism, juice cleansing, bone broth cleansing, potato only diets, water fasting. There was just a plethora of literature that was like really, really mind blowing.
So what was your diet like at the beginning while you were healing, and what's it like now? Has it evolved, and what's the difference there?
Yeah, it's evolved majorly. I was vegan for 8 years. And the first few years of being vegan were really good. They were coming from a standard American diet, eliminating all processed foods, taking out all the immune trigger foods, focusing on eating whole foods was life-changing for me. Then by year 3, diminishing returns started happening big time. Probably some nutrient deficiencies were rolling in, and by year 8, as a vegan, I was a mess. I was just an absolute mess. My skin stayed healed, luckily, but my testosterone had dropped to like bad, low clinical levels. I was having digestion issues, lots of brain fog, oral issues, despite having great oral hygiene. Just the typical obvious nutrient deficiencies. And then from there, I turned to kind of an animal-based keto. And then from animal-based keto, I experimented with carnivore, then from carnivore to ketovore, and then from ketovore to lion, and then lion back to carnivore. And then now where I'm at is I just call myself animal-based, where, 2 to 5 times per week, I'm eating basically ribeyes and ground beef, butter and salt. And then other days I'm incorporating things like fruit, honey, maple syrup, raw dairy. So I have days where I'm strict carnivore, 0 carb. I have days where I'm under 100 grams of carbs, and I have days where I'm around 300 grams of carbs. And those cycle around my heaviest workout and movement days and my biggest stressing days. So on days where I'm not doing much, I'm not eating hardly any carbs. And on days where I'm having a ton of output, I might bring in up to 300 grams of carbs, mostly from fruit, a little white rice, like I said, some dairy, some honey, some maple syrup. But I do cycle on and off the carbs throughout a week, big time. Like from day to day, my diet looks very different.
Do you ever have any flare-ups?
No, I haven't had flare-ups in over a decade.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So for that whole decade, for the whole 10 years, you've basically just been eating whole foods.
Yeah, exactly.
In one way or another, whether it was plant-based for a while and then meat-based, and but basically that whole time, that whole 10 years, it's been whole foods for you with no flare-ups.
For 15 years, it's been whole food focused. For the past 12 years being flare-up free, it's been, completely whole foods, and occasion, like I can go and have a coffee here and there. I can, go to mom's and have a pizza, watching a football game with mom and dad. Like nothing's going to happen. But is that a regular occurrence for me? No, it's very rarely that I eat crappy foods.
That's amazing that you can do that you can go and you can have, and I guess where you're kind of all or nothing, you're okay with just having that one pizza. For somebody like me that struggles from eating disorders and disordered eating, if I went somewhere and had a pizza, like you said, some of your clients, it ends up being like a week-long thing. And that is really hard. That's a hard place to be, because then you have all these symptoms, but the idea of having to get everything back on track is so overwhelming. It's almost easier to stay where you are, which is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have clients who are in that same boat, where during the healing process, you're not going to get away with cheat meals. And if you're someone who is closer to the side of, if I eat this one thing, it's going to trigger a week or a few days or a month or 6 months of eating really, really bad and being addicted, then you have to have a different strategy than someone who's, a decade healed and can get away with a little looseness. And to be honest, with my personality, like let's say I'm going out to dinner with my sisters and it's a birthday party and I have zero choice of what I'm eating. It's not that I actually want to eat Chinese food. It doesn't appeal to me anymore. But if I have to, I can be social and get away with it. But up until that point, there was also a lot of strategies that I implemented when I couldn't get away with that. Like having a plan of attack of eating a big meal before, and an exit strategy, and a social strategy of why I'm not eating and why I'm drinking only water, or what have you. So there's levels, like, as they say, there's levels to this shit. And it's like where I'm at, I don't necessarily think that people need to emulate and do what I do, depending on where they're at in their journey.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things is what you just mentioned, is that social aspect of it and being with other people. I feel like the standard American diet, the carbohydrates, the sugar, the processed foods, is the only drug that it's acceptable to give people a hard time for not using, right? Is you can public shame somebody for not eating the pizza that's at the table or not having a piece of the birthday cake, and they'll sit there and tell you how good it is and how much you're missing out on this birthday cake when you're choosing not to do it for health reasons or mental reasons or whatever. And I think that's really sad that that's where we are, is that you can make fun of somebody for not eating the foods or partaking. It happens with alcohol too, not as much with alcohol, because people accept that somebody might be an alcoholic and they just, don't talk about it or whatever. So it's not as bad, but people say, oh, I'll have a drink. But boy, when it comes to sugar, it's like you are the odd man out. Basically, they will make fun of you if you don't want to have that piece of cake.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It's a interesting part of our social dynamic as humans. I think that there's a lot to that. Being super healthy can trigger people, and it can be a defense mechanism to rationalize their own behavior.
Mhm.
And there are some people that can just get away with it. My dad's almost 80, and he's like 5'9" and 165 pounds, and plays golf all the time, and he's lean, and he eats garbage half the time.
Yeah.
He does, nothing affects him. So it's like he can go to have pizza and birthday cake, and it has no effect on him. He's one of those people where, as a person like me back in the day, if I were to just go off the rails and have sriracha sauce and coffee and have a beer and just eat the spicy chicken wings and then the lasagna, like I'm in pain and suffering for a month afterwards. It's interesting. It's a very weird dynamic that we have as humans.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's so hard because there is that social pressure. So that's a hard thing to get past. And I think people, like you said, they almost like get mad because, and there are studies on that. Like if you're doing better than somebody else by keeping your house clean or keeping your room, like when you get better at things on purpose because you're trying to be better at things, other people can kind of take out their frustrations on you because they feel like they're not strong enough to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's super true. And there's a part of this that to some people may seem harsh, but for the people that I work with, they're in a place where they need to take a close look at all aspects of their health, and the places and people that you surround yourself with can make or break you. So if you're someone who is constantly bombarded with that type of energy, well, you should probably change your circles. You should probably hang out with different people. And if that's the type of energy you're getting from your family, that's one thing, because family's family, it's hard. But if you're choosing to be social with certain groups, and every time you're around them, they're picking at you because you're not indulging in unhealthy behaviors, you should probably get new friends.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Rob, this was really great. Tell me how people can find you.
Yeah, you can find me. All of my socials have links on everything. So all the bios of my socials, and underneath all the videos in the description box, you can get a hold of me. I have an online course that I run where we support people who are overcoming skin health issues like eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, rosacea, acne. And we have a very holistic approach. I also do private coaching. So I'm easy to find. Just click any of the links underneath my videos or in my bios. And if you need help, we're happy to help.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time on the Carnivore Revolution.